All right, good morning and welcome to the Louisiana Drive-In Workshop. Thank you to everyone from all over Louisiana for joining us. We also want to say hello to any SACAC board and committee members who are joining us today. Today's Drive-In Workshop is hosted by, coordinated by me, Marshall Gray. I'm the Director of College Counseling and Academics at the Episcopal School of Acadiana in Broussard, and Danielle Staggers, who's running our slideshow today. She's the Director of College Counseling at Metairie Park Country Day School. So we're grateful for the opportunity to collaborate and share professional development for counselors across Louisiana. Virtual drive-in workshops like this one allow us to hear from more experts and reach more people. We're grateful for all of the presenters that we have today. And before we get started today, we just want to share some virtual norms for today's workshop. Um, of course, it's pretty straightforward, and the idea of if you're not presenting or talking, please mute yourself, use the video wisely, and have it on if possible so that presenters can see some smiling faces and have some engagement. Use the chat responsibly. Use the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question or send a question during the chat to Danielle, who's going to be monitoring that, and just stay engaged. We like people to engage with us. It's certainly more fun for us as presenters, and helps us know that what we're doing is making a difference. Um, Now, before we go on, we'd just like to know a little bit about who's joining us today. And so if you could throw into the chat function what parish you're joining us from, which category best describes your role, school counselor, college counselor, independent educational consultant, transfer admission counselor, freshman admission counselor, college university admission director, or something that we're not remembering. And then, what best describes where you're coming from in terms of public high school, private high school, community-based organization, public university, private university, self-employed, or again, other, if we're missing something there as well. So take a minute and let us know, because I think we've got registrations from literally all over Louisiana. And then as everybody's doing that, I just want to give a quick overview of our agenda, because our presenters are going to lead 3 different sessions covering relevant topics to support your work with counseling students and families through the college admission process. And so the first one is a TOPS and FAFSA seminar um, delivered by Hailey Pellegrin, and then counselor well-being that's going to be delivered by Shannon Barrio and Alex Gonzalez, prepared by Elizabeth Sandridge. And then one of the topics that was requested of us is counseling LGBTQIA students through the college admission process by Yatunde Rubenstein. And so we're grateful to all of our presenters who are going to be here today. And I know we'll probably continue to see some people, and you keep telling us where you're coming from, and you can put some chats in there, questions in the chat as we move in. But I'd like to move on to our first presentation. And so Hailey Pellegrin's the high school counselor and parent liaison outreach coordinator of the Louisiana Office for Scholarships and Financial Aid, LOSFA. She transferred to LOSFA in October of 2023 from LSU A&M, where she worked as the TOPS and Scholarships coordinator, counselor, excuse me. She has excellent knowledge of TOPS and other LOSFA programs and experience with TOPS assistance and processing from the counselor and institution side. You may also recognize her name or face from various emails, counselor communications, or webinars you may have seen or attended. Hailey, thank you for joining us and sharing information about TOPS and the FAFSA, and please take it away.
Thanks, Marshall. Good morning, everyone. My name's Hailey Pellegrin. Again, like Marshall said, I am one of the outreach coordinators at LOSPA, the Louisiana Office of Student Financial Assistance. So just a little bit about LOSPA. We are a program under the Board of Regents. We administer the state scholarship and grants programs, as well as the state's College 529 savings programs. Our most popular one is TOPS. Next slide. So again, I know he kind of just like went over who I am, so we're going to go over some updates. So wanted to start with ACT work keys. So this is a common question we get from our counselors, because I know in the past you've had to submit work key scores. Well, thankfully now we do have a contract with ACT, and we will receive ACT work keys scores for every graduating senior who takes it and has an eligible score prior to April 30th. we will receive those scores directly from ACT in May. Now, if you have a student that does take the work keys later than April 30th, that is those students that we would need you to notify us of. So there's two different ways that you can do that. You would either submit the work key skills report, which is what you would receive with the student's information, or you would submit the work keys test result form if you have multiple students. So if you have a cohort of students that takes it late, you would then submit it that way to us. And we just ask that also, when you notify us of this, please make sure the student has already done their TOPS online application or their FAFSA so that we can make sure that they're processed for TOPS eligibility timely. So we are very aware of ACT changing the requirement of science to being test optional. So as I'm sure you guys are aware, legislation has to enact a change in legislature to change any qualifications for TOPS, any eligibility requirements, any continuing eligibility requirements. They would have to meet to determine to change that. So even though ACT has made the science portion optional, we are still recommending, out of an abundance of caution for any current seniors, to go ahead and still take the science portion of the ACT, because as far as for TOPS purposes and TOPS eligibility purposes, science is still required at this time. If for some reason that changes, it will probably most likely, I had counselors from East Baton Rouge ask, do you think it would affect our current seniors right now, like the ones graduating in May of 2025? No. I feel like even if legislature changes, it would be for future cohorts of students, not our current seniors. But for updates about changes to the ACT and the effects of the graduating class of 2025 and thereon, just follow us on social media and look at our website. We will definitely pump all of that information out. So, legislature is getting ready to meet in the spring. And if that is enacted and changed, we would, of course, send out counselor communications to you guys. We would put that on our website. We would put that on social media, and we would make sure that students, parents, and counselors are all aware and know that, there's been a change to TOPS and science is no longer required. So the science portion, yes, is required for TOPS. I do see that there's a question in the chat. Science portion is currently still required for TOPS. So please, please, please encourage your seniors to take the science portion, even though it's optional for ACT purposes. SAT agreement. So like ACT, we now have an agreement with SAT. So previously, if you've been a counselor for many years, you probably remember having to advise your students to send us, either mail it, fax us, or send us little screen grabs of their scores so that we can process their SAT, and translate it to the correct score for ACT. However, they no longer do that anymore. We no longer accept those scores that way. We now have an agreement with SAT. So if your student chooses to take the SAT, they would just put that scholarship code of 9019 on their test. And that's how we would get it. We can only accept official scores from SAT now. So anything that, and just so you guys know, the difference is anything that's unofficial would be anything sent from the student to us. We would need it directly from SAT. So I'm just introducing this to you guys. You may or may not be familiar with MJ Foster Promise. MJ Foster Promise is it's our second largest award behind TOPS. It is definitely super popular with our adult non-traditional learner population. However, legislation has met, and in 2024, they enacted some changes to MJ Foster Promise. So I'm just introducing this to our counselors now because this will affect you in the future. It may not affect you right now, but as you can see, by 2027, 2028, you can be 17 years old or older. So just so you guys are aware, MJ Foster Promise program is an award for students that may be interested in a certification or an associate's degree in a high demand field such as IT, transportation, or healthcare, and it would cover their tuition charged to their fee bill to certain schools that are MJ eligible, and books and supplies as well if it's charged to their fee bill. However, there are certain majors that they and certain programs they would have to enroll in at certain schools. But as you can notice, So the age is continuing to go down every year. So I understand this might be new to you. Please don't panic. Please don't be like, I've never seen this before. This is all new to me. We will keep introducing this to you guys and familiarizing you with MJ for the future, just because, as you can see, the age requirement for eligibility of MJ is going to change. So it used to be 21 and now it's going to decrease to 17. Currently, it is 20 years old, and then it's going to go down from there, you guys. You can see 25, 26, 19 or older, 26, 27, 18 or older, 27, 28, 17 years old or older. And the difference between this award and our TOPS Tech is TOPS Tech is a merit-based award. MJ Foster is a need-based award. So, the student would need to fill out the MJ Foster application and also fill out their FAFSA. But this is a great option for your students that may not qualify for TOPS Tech. Maybe they don't have that 2.5 TOPS core GPA that they need for tech or for OPH, but maybe they can still, use this as an option to help pay for their school. And again, this would be for, a certification, a vocational degree, or an associate's degree. If a student already has an associate's degree, so if they go back to school and then come back to you and like, hey, I've heard of MJ, I'm super interested in this. Unfortunately, if they have an associate's degree or higher already, they wouldn't qualify. So please make sure this is for our students that may have, a high school diploma or a GED, which is also great because to be eligible for TOPS, you do need a high school diploma. So this is, a separate program that could be offered to our non-traditional learners. Maybe our students that maybe are coming back and a lot of our adult non-traditional learners right now are doing high set and then they're going to do MJ at the same time. So this is definitely an award that's super popular and is only going to be more popular and relevant to you guys. So, more legislative changes. So, just to let you guys know about MJ, they increased the maximum amount to be appropriated to 40 million. The increase only allows for a maximum appropriation, it does not require it. So, just so you guys are aware, MJ is a first come, first build award. So what that means is number one, students should apply as soon as the application opens. They do have to apply every year. Applications open in the summer, and then they once they pass the billing deadline at their school would bill us, and then as funding is allotted, we provide that to the institutions on behalf of the students. Now, we have exhausted funding in the past, so we are just working to educate and hope that we will keep increasing that MJ Foster amount and helping students find other additional aid as well. But with the age of eligibility decreasing, we really want to let our high school counselors know about this because this will start affecting you. Students will start asking questions once that age is 17. So, Act 211, another popular one that I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about, adds a requirement that students must earn one Carnegie unit of credit in computer science to meet the TOPS Tech Opportunity Performance and Honors Core curricula. So, it provides that this credit could be obtained as a math or science elective for either core. Um, and then, if students are TOPS Tech, it could also count as a jumpstart course. So, for our TOPS Tech students, it could be a math elective, a science elective, or a jumpstart course. For our TOPS University pathway, our TOPS Opportunity Performance and Honors, it can count as a math elective, a science elective, or as an alternative for foreign language. So that's kind of what this is explaining. And just so you guys are aware, this is going to start with our current eighth graders right now that will be freshmen in the fall. This is a requirement for them to be eligible for TOPS, Act 211. I do have a nice little slide later on in this presentation that's really going to break down all the core changes because I'm sure if you've been following along with us and staying up to date, you know that there are many, many TOPS core changes that have occurred thanks to our legislation. And so we have about 8 different TOPS core. So, but we're going to break it down for you as simple as possible, let you know those changes so that you can be aware. But this Act 211 affects our current 8th grade cohort that will be freshmen in the fall. So please, please note that this will become a requirement very soon. Okay, next slide. TOPS Tech Early Start, I really just wanted to touch on TOPS Tech Early Start because as I've been doing some outreach events with, parents, students, and counselors, I've realized there's just a little bit of miscommunication or misunderstanding about what TOPS Tech Early Start is. So I just want to educate you guys and also let you guys know one of the most common fears and questions that we have is if a student takes TOPS Tech Early Start in high school, does that affect their TOPS Tech award in once they're like graduated and in college? Does it affect their TOPS opportunity performance or honors award? Like, does it take away from that pot of money for them? The answer to that is no. It will not affect that award. So TOPS Tech Early Start is its own award. Okay. So this program provides an incentive for Louisiana public high school students to start early in preparing for a career in a top demand occupation. The TOPS Tech Early Start Award provides $600 per academic year for any eligible 11th or 12th grade student attending a Louisiana public high school who wishes to currently enroll in up to 6 credit hours per semester to pursue a certification in an eligible program at a public or non public college or an approved training program. So, again, I just want to stress that if the student participates in TOPS Tech Early Start and they get money for TOPS Tech Early Start, that does not affect the money pot for their TOPS Tech Award or for their TOPS Opportunity Performance and Honors Award. This is a separate award that they can take advantage of. So, eligibility requirements. So, the student has to be in good standing. They have to be in 11th and 12th grade at a Louisiana public high school. They have to have a cumulative GPA of a 2.0 on a 4.0 scale. Um, and then they do need a 15 on the mathematics and English portion of the pre-ACT or on the ACT, or an equivalent value on the SAT or a silver level score, on ACT work keys. And then they would enroll in an industry-based occupational or vocational education program in a top demand occupation, which just means an eligible program. If you have questions about this, we have a list of programs on our website. There's a whole page just for TOPS Tech Early Start. It lists these requirements and it also lists the programs, because I don't want to get this confused and just think any dual enrollment course could be covered. There are only certain programs at certain schools. So please do take note of that. So the TOPS Tech Early Start application, it's been revised. So you can access it on our website in the form directory. Students do have to complete the TOPS Tech Early Start application to be eligible for funding, and then they would submit it to the financial aid office at the school that they're going to be doing the dual enrollment at. So for instance, if they're going to be doing a TOPS Tech approved program at BRCC, the counselor's aware, they're going to fill out this application and provide it to the financial aid office at BRCC. Failure to use the required form could result in an audit finding. So we really just ask that you please encourage the students to fill out this application so that I's are dotted and T's are crossed and there's no issues moving forward with that student for TOPS Tech Early Start. So now we're going to go over some TOPS. Next slide. Okay, so some reminders. So TOPS funding is contingent upon appropriation. So for those of you that may not be familiar with that or what that really means, is each year the legislature has to meet to determine if there's funding and if TOPS is going to be fully funding for the next academic year. So they meet every year and they decide, will the next year be fully funded? So as of right now, of course, our 24-25 academic year is fully funded. They will meet in the spring to determine if the following academic year, so our 25-26 year will be fully funded. Please don't panic. It has been fully funded for a while now. The last time I think there was a funding shortfall was 2016-2017. And since then, it has been fully funded. So please do not panic, but they do meet every year to ensure that TOPS is going to be fully funded. Students do have options though. So if for some reason TOPS is not fully funded, they can choose to forfeit a payment until it is fully funded so that they don't receive a partial payment, or they can receive a prorated payment, and that would count as one of their 8 semesters of eligibility. So they do have options. So they can either pay out of pocket and forfeit and wait till it is fully funded so that they can get the full amount of funding to go towards their tuition, or they can receive a prorated amount. So they do have options. if there is a funding shortfall. So this is what I was talking about. So just take a moment if you can screen grab this, or I know that this is being recorded, but if you just want to like hold on to this, take a picture of this. We tried to make it as simple and condensed as possible for our different core changes. Okay. So for our current juniors and seniors, you can see that there's going to be no changes to the TOPS core curriculum. So the TOPS core curriculum is as it stands and as you know it for our TOPS Tech and our TOPS University, so our Opportunity Performance and Honors Pathway students. So beginning with the class of 2027, that is our current sophomores. So students can choose to complete 2 computer science courses rather than 2 foreign language courses to complete the TOPS OPH core curriculum. So they can either choose 2 computer science courses or 2 foreign language courses. However, they cannot mix. So it can't be one Spanish and then a computer science. So they can either take Spanish 1, Spanish 2, or the computer sciences that would meet that requirement. That's for our Opportunity Performance and Honors Pathway, our TOPS University. For our sophomores that are TOPS Tech, it adds geometry as a math requirement. Okay. So previously, it would be that they had to take algebra and then they would have 3 electives to choose for math. Starting with our sophomores, they're going to have to take algebra and geometry, and then they're only going to have 2 electives of math to choose from. Okay. For our freshman cohort, our class of 2028, our babies that just started, this adds financial literacy as a core course for our TOPS OPH. So that increases the total unit for the TOPS core for University Pathway for Opportunity Performance and Honors from 19 to 20. So financial literacy is in its own bucket. It's its own core unit. It doesn't replace anything else. So it is going to be its own unit for our TOPS University Pathway students. For our TOPS Tech students, it's going to be a 3rd math requirement. So for our freshmen that are TOPS Tech, that means they're going to need algebra, geometry, financial literacy, and then they get to choose 1 math elective. Okay. So for our university pathway, financial literacy is its own bucket. For our TOPS Tech, it's going to take one of their math electives away. Okay. And then the graduating class of 2029. So our current 8th graders that are going to be freshmen in the fall, this adds a requirement that students must earn 1 Carnegie unit of computer science to meet the TOPS Tech Opportunity Performance and Honors core curriculum. So I know I touched on that earlier, but again, that's just beginning to be a requirement with our current 8th graders. So again, that means that any of them can use it as a science or math elective, or for our university pathway, that means that they can have it as a foreign language instead. And then for our tech, they can use it as one of their jumpstart courses. So again, I know I went over that earlier, but this is just like the best way we can condense it to make it the least confusing as possible for you guys. And just have a visual of these are the core changes that are coming up in by class. Because of course, starting very soon, you're going to have so many different cohorts of students that are going to have different requirements. So in order to be eligible for TOPS, you do have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. We also advise students that are, we understand that the permanent residency process takes a while, right? So they may not be a permanent resident before they graduate high school, and that's okay. But we encourage students, if they are applying for permanent residency status, to please, please, please start it prior to their graduation date. So once they do get permanent residency status, then they can be eligible for TOPS. So let's say a student starts their permanent residency application. They're a junior or a senior in high school, and it takes years to get that complete. And then they finally, when they're like a sophomore in college, get their permanent residency status. They notify our office, and we can back pay for any eligible semesters of TOPS that they are eligible for. So if they're a sophomore in college and they paid out of pocket, for the 2 years or the year that they had, went to school as a freshman, we can back pay for any semesters of eligibility for TOPS that they're eligible for. So that's just why we are encouraging that, because I feel like there might be a misconception like, oh, if you're not a permanent resident, you just can't qualify. That's not necessarily the case as long as they do it prior to high school graduation. Now, I will say, if they graduate high school already and they haven't started the process, then unfortunately they would not be eligible. So please, that's why we're just asking if you have students that, may fall into that category, please encourage them to start the process before they graduate high school. So there is a requirement for students. So if they're independent, the student themselves must reside in Louisiana 2 years prior to their high school graduation. So for our May 2025 graduates, that means that they would have to have established residency in Louisiana no later than April of 2023. If they are a dependent student on the FAFSA, that would also require their parent to be a Louisiana resident as well, which again means 2 years prior to their high school graduation. So for our May 2025 graduates, it would be April of 2023. So 2 years prior. We do educate students and parents that you have to have no prior criminal convictions on file to be eligible for TOPS. We tell them rest assured this does not include misdemeanor traffic violations. So if you have a heavy foot or something like that, and you've received a speeding ticket or something like that, this is not quite that. So we do allow them that ease and just tell them if they do have a question about if something on their record is considered a final criminal conviction, we just advise that they seek legal counsel with their family attorney to see what conviction would be actually determined a final criminal conviction or not. So, students entering a college or university under an early admissions program shall be considered a first time freshman no earlier than the first semester following the academic year in which they graduated from high school. So, that just means that if the student graduates in December, they're going to be considered a first time freshman. And so if the students graduate in December of 24, they're going to be considered a first time freshman in August of 25, regardless if they graduate in December or if they graduated in May. That's kind of what this is saying. So for TOPS purposes, the annual academic year will go from September 1 to August 31st. So September 1 of 2024 to August 31st of 2025. So students who graduate early at mid-year, so this is specifically for our December grads, they will be eligible for a TOPS award in the spring semester following graduation. However, the student will not be processed for the TOPS award um, until their senior cohort. So if they graduate in December, we're going to process them in May with the other students at your school who walk. So um, the May 2025 graduates, those December 2024 graduates are going to be processed for TOPS at the same time. Okay. So if they graduate early, they will be eligible for a TOPS award in the fall semester following graduation. But if they choose to want to go to school in the spring, so let's say they graduate mid year in December and they're really wanting to go to school in the spring semester, they would pay for that spring semester out of pocket. We would process them in the summer with the May graduates, and then we can back pay them for the spring semester if they choose. If not, all students would be eligible for payment in the fall. So again, mid-year graduates would process with the May cohort. And if the student chooses, they could be paid retroactively for that spring semester. If not, then they would just receive payment in the fall with everyone else that's in their same cohort. They do have to comply with the same FAFSA and ACT requirements, though, as the graduating class. I feel like that's so important to highlight because you would think if a student graduates in December, then they would need to have their ACT score by December. But technically, because they're being processed in May, they have until that April deadline. So our December 2024 graduates have until April of 2025 to get a qualifying score for TOPS. And like we're going to go over the different requirements as they currently stand, and you'll be able to see that. And so they do have that option, but they are going to be held to the same deadlines as those spring graduates. So we just put this in more for students, but also just for our counselors. So in order to be considered for TOPS, they do have to, Be registered at a BESI approved high school. All Louisiana public schools are approved. If the student attends a non public school, it of course has to be approved by BESI in order for the student to be considered for TOPS. We provide them with this link so that they can see the list. So the top core curriculum courses do have to be completed by the date of high school graduation. This is more specific for our students that might be our summer grads, or, after the May cohort, maybe they have to take a class late and they don't, um, graduate on May 12th. Technically, they would graduate, at the end of May, on May 31st. In order to be considered for TOPS, all the TOPS core curriculum courses must be completed by the date of high school graduation. So you can't have a student that does a summer course, doesn't complete it until August 12th, but put that they have a May 12th graduation date. Unfortunately, then that course would not be considered. So please just note that. That's the importance of making sure the graduation date is correct in the student transcript system. And so distant learning courses approved by the high school may be used to qualify for TOPS. So as long as they are equivalent courses, they can take distance learning, they can take college courses in the classroom, online, and as long as they are determined to be equivalent courses and appear on the student's official high school transcript, those can be TOPS eligible courses, of course. So the TOPS core GPA is calculated on a 4.0 quality point scale, except for certain designated courses that are calculated on a 5.0 scale. So that's going to be AP courses, IB courses, gifted courses, dual enrollment, honors. This is typically going to be for our upperclassmen that are going to have the 5.0. So obviously there are going to be some courses that are not going to qualify on a 5.0 scale. They're going to qualify on a 4.0 scale. But for most of our junior and senior honors and AP and dual enrollment courses, those are going to be calculated on a 5.0 scale. We do have a list of those courses, though. It's located here, but it's also on our website. If you have any of our documents, we do have them virtually. There is a list. So we can definitely provide you guys with that. You can just contact us and we can provide virtual copies of all of our information. And so you can have those to provide, to have for yourself and to your students. So the cumulative GPA for the TOPS award is calculating using only those grades achieved in the core curriculum courses. So I feel like we stress this to our parents and students. I know that you guys are more familiar with it, but we just try to educate them that, the 19 credit units for our TOPS opportunity performance and honors pathway, those are the only courses we're taking into account for that TOPS core GPA. So it can be different from your high school GPA because it doesn't include health, PE. If you go to a private school and you take, a religion course, those electives, those extra electives are not counted. So we're trying very hard to communicate that to our students that your high school GPA is not necessarily your TOPS core GPA. And that's just so important because I feel like a lot of students think that they're eligible for TOPS. They're like, oh, I have a 2.7 GPA. I'm golden. I'm going to get TOPS. And then we process them and they actually have a 2.48 TOPS core GPA. And the GPA cannot be rounded. P grade. So if they get a pass fail, some schools will do a pass fail. P grade would be, P grade would be included as in check mark they met the requirement, they completed the course, but it would not weigh into their GPA. So that's important to note too. P grade is great, they're going to complete the course, but it's not going to go towards their GPA. So what if they need a letter grade to make sure that it's where it needs to be? Also, if a student completes more than the 19 credits, let's say they love Spanish. We have lots of students that really like Spanish, and so they're going to take Spanish 1, Spanish 2, Spanish 3, Spanish 4. We're going to take the highest 2 grades in that foreign language bucket for our opportunity performance and honor students. So if they, and it doesn't have to be in order. So if they do well in Spanish 1 and Spanish 4, we're going to take those 2 highest grades, Spanish 2, Spanish 3, so on and so forth. So that's just to say if they take multiple in a core unit, we're going to take the highest 2 grades. Or, if they take an extra English, we're going to take the highest 4 English grades. So that is just kind of what we are saying here. Dual enrollment. So we have been asked previously by other counselors to touch on dual enrollment and really explain it. So I'm going to go into detail with you guys as well because I feel like this is a um, very good point that I want to make sure everyone understands. So students receive two grades for dual enrollment. The grade that the high school assigns in STS, the student transcript system, is the grade that we use when considering a student's TOPS award eligibility. So the grade that you guys put in STS for us, or your data manager puts in STS for us, that is the grade we're using to determine their TOPS eligibility, which I'm sure, as you know, as a counselor, teacher, etc., you understand that, okay, um, the grades can obviously be different. So we're going to take into account the grade that you put in STS or that the data manager puts in STS on behalf of the student for their TOPS eligibility. Okay. So for that TOPS core GPA, that's the grade we're using. So post-secondary coursework is not reviewed for renewal eligibility purposes for the student until after their first semester or term is completed. The student's cumulative GPA is based on all college coursework the student completes, including dual enrollment courses. So what this is saying is now we're taking into account that grade they made on their college transcript. So let's say they're taking a dual enrollment course through Southeastern. They make a B in it for high school purposes, and technically when it's weighted out, it's a C on their college transcript. That is going to be not only on their college transcript and follow them for their cumulative GPA that way, it's also going to be calculated into their TOPS core GPA. So, and that's important for renewal purposes. They have a certain GPA requirement they have to meet, as well as an hours earned requirement they have to meet in college to retain their TOPS. And that's what we're trying to explain is that it, yes, dual enrollment, and sometimes dual enrollment courses can be great. A lot of times I've seen them affect students more positively than negatively. But a lot of times, like a student makes an A and it helps boost their cumulative GPA. But we also want you guys to understand the flip side, which is, sometimes they can have a better grade on the high school side and a little bit lower of a grade on the college side. And we don't take into account plus or minus system because not all colleges do that across the board. We don't take into account something that colleges do called grade exclusion or repeat delete. We take into account the old grade and the new grade for retention purposes. So we just want students to be super aware of that, and counselors as well, as they're like helping them decide, is dual enrollment for me? Just make sure that they're aware that this can also affect their cumulative GPA moving forward once they are a college student. It will not only affect their college transcript GPA, but also their TOPS core GPA for retention purposes. And dual enrollment courses taken while in high school do not count towards the 24-hour requirement as they are in a previous academic year. So students are required to earn 24 hours in the academic year to retain their TOPS award. Unfortunately, courses taken in high school do not count. And so we just try very hard to explain that to students because they think I took a dual enrollment class in the spring semester. So in this calendar year, I've earned 24 hours, and it's like, no, unfortunately, academic year runs August to, the end of July, early August of the next academic year. And it has to be in the current year that you're in that you have to complete those 24 hours. High school dual enrollment doesn't count toward those hours earned. It only counts towards the GPA. So we're just trying to also, explain that to you guys so that you guys can help us on our end really educate and explain this to the students. So ACT, we take the highest composite score of one test. We do not accept super score for TOPS. So we stress that to students, as I know it's super confusing because they do have super scoring and some colleges accept that for for their admissions process. However, for us, when it comes to determining TOPS award eligibility, we need the highest composite score from a single test to be considered. For the ACT registration at the bottom with that code and date of birth, that's more for our freshmen and sophomores. If they're going to go ahead and take the ACT early and they want to make sure we get those scores, they would just put that code in their date of birth. We do have a contract with ACT for our juniors and seniors, so we can get those scores automatically, but it doesn't hurt if the juniors or seniors want to put that code. But they don't have to. This code, this 1595, the date of birth, that is more for our sophomores and our freshmen who might want to be taking the ACT early, just so that we can make sure we get those scores. So students can take the SAT in lieu of the ACT. So if they choose to, take the SAT instead, they are more than welcome to. We will just convert it to an ACT score and make sure that's eligible. So for SAT registration, they can just put the scholarship code of 9019 and we will get those scores automatically. They can also go into their SAT portal and send those transcripts to us, those scores, um, officially, just not with a screenshot or anything now that we do have a contract with SAT, but they can choose to do so. And students ask us all the time, which one is better? They're both standardized online tests, but I, trust y'all as counselors just to provide this as an option. And then, if they hit a mental block or a roadblock and they're not doing well in the ACT, just try the SAT. Maybe it's just, a fresh perspective on a different test, and then they end up getting a qualifying score. So we are okay with either score. So our different award levels, so our TOPS university pathway is opportunity, performance, and honors. So that's in one basket. That's what's essentially called like our core four. And then our TOPS tech is our jumpstart students. So the tech is in their own basket. So for opportunity award eligibility, students need a 2.5 TOPS core GPA with an ACT composite score, not super score of a 20 or higher, or an SAT score of 1030. Completion of that TOPS core curriculum, as well as the TOPS general eligibility requirements. The TOPS general eligibility requirements would be like, no prior criminal convictions, Louisiana resident, US citizen. So we just tried to, explain this again, as TOPS can be a common misconception, but TOPS provides it is a portion of funding towards a student's college tuition. So it does cover tuition. It doesn't cover any fees. So that does get confusing. I feel like parents and students might think TOPS covers the whole tuition. It covers a portion. Um, as you know, the TOPS award amounts have been set since 2016, 2017, and college tuition has increased since then, of course, and so has their fees. So TOPS does not cover any fees. And so we list those out for our students as well. But the TOPS award can be combined with other forms of financial aid up to the student's cost of attendance. So all the time we get questions from students and parents. Can they use it in conjunction with an academic scholarship? Absolutely, up to their cost of attendance. They can use it with their Pell Grant and any other need or income-based awards that they receive, any merit-based scholarships. Yes, please, up to your cost of attendance. You can use both. So the TOPS Opportunity Award can be used to pursue an academic or undergraduate degree, a vocational or technical degree, or a non-academic degree. So for our students that are opportunity, performance, and honors, some of them may not choose to go to the university. Maybe they don't want a bachelor's. Maybe they're thinking, I want to do cosmetology school or proprietary school. Maybe I want to go to a tech program, even though I have um, the option to go to university. I want to go to a community college and I want to get a certification or I want to get an associate's degree. They can do that. If they choose to go that route and do a technical program, they will receive the same benefits and just be held to the same retention requirements as the TOPS Tech Award recipients, which is a little bit different than the TOPS Opportunity retention requirements for our TOPS Opportunity students. However, you can choose to either go, if you're an Opportunity Award recipient or performance or honors, you can choose to go to a 2-year program, a community college, a technical program, or a 4-year university of your choice. So it can be used for a maximum of 8 semesters or 12 quarters. A lot of times students and parents are like, hey, I'm on a 5-year degree track. Is there any way that I can get an exception and get like an extra semester or 2 of TOPS? Unfortunately, it's a maximum of 8 or 12 quarters if you go to LA Tech. So that's the maximum, even if you're like on a 5-year architecture um, degree track, or if you're on an engineering track. Unfortunately, it is 8 maximum across the board. Next slide. So any recipient who successfully completes a bachelor's degree in less than 8 semesters or 12 quarters may receive any remaining terms of eligibility for graduate studies. So what this means is once a student graduates undergrad, a lot of our students now, especially with the options for dual enrollment courses, graduate already with an associate's degree or very close to it. And so then they can graduate early with their bachelor's. So if a student graduates early with their bachelor's degree, they can use any remaining semesters of eligibility for graduate school, professional school, um, And that could be professional school, could be med school, law school, vet med school, or any graduate program. They just have to enroll within 1 year of graduating from their bachelor's into an eligible program. So they can take a gap year if they want. Maybe it's, taking some time to get maybe it's taking some time to get, enrolled or accepted into their program of choice. They have a year, and then once they're enrolled, they can receive their TOPS award for graduate school, professional school, which is so great and so important, and something I wish I would have known when I was in college, because there's limited funding for graduate and professional school programs. And so you can use your TOPS. And if you graduate in good standing and you have that TOPS performance or honors award stipend, that stipend follows you as well. And the tuition amount for a graduate or professional student that has TOPS is more, because it's percentage based off the tuition charge. And so obviously tuition charge to, law school, vet med school, grad school is more expensive than undergrad. And so this is a great opportunity for students to use if they choose to graduate early. So for our performance award students, they need a 3.25 minimum TOPS core GPA with an ACT composite score, not super score, of a 23 or higher, an SAT score of 1130, completion of the TOPS core curriculum, and then those TOPS general eligibility requirements. They have to meet those. So for the performance award, this provides all the same benefits as the opportunity award. So everything I listed, plus a $400 annual stipend. So on top of the TOPS tuition award amount, they would receive an additional $200 each semester for a total of $400 a year. So for our honors awards recipient, this is our top tier. They have to have a 3.5 minimum TOPS core curriculum GPA with an ACT composite score of a 27 or higher. So remember, not super scoring. An SAT score of 1260, completion of the TOPS core curriculum, and then those TOPS general eligibility requirements as well. Our honor students get all the same benefits as the Opportunity Award, plus an $800 annual stipend. So on top of the TOPS tuition award amount, they would receive $400 additional dollars each semester for $800 total in the academic year. So for the TOPS Tech Award eligibility requirements, the student needs to receive a 2.5 minimum TOPS core or TOPS Tech core curriculum GPA. So I just want to stress that, because that is a common misconception. I just did a presentation yesterday with a teacher, a JAG coordinator, who did not realize that this was an option. So, because obviously some of our schools may not have the resources to offer the TOPS Tech core curriculum, maybe they don't have the resources to offer those Jumpstart courses, so they only offer TOPS core or TOPS University pathway. But the student has to complete either or curriculum, so they can either be on the TOPS University pathway and still be TOPS Tech eligible, or be on the TOPS Tech pathway and be TOPS Tech eligible. So they have to have a minimum ACT score of a 17, an SAT score of 920, or a WorkKeys Silver level score, and completion of either of the two TOPS core curricula. So they can do the TOPS University pathway or the Jumpstart pathway and qualify for tech. So this is a great opportunity for your students that maybe just can't get that 20. That we do encourage them to keep trying and keep taking it again, so they have more options. If they do have aspirations of getting a 4-year degree and they want TOPS to help pay for that, we do encourage them to keep taking the ACT. But this is for those students that might, need other options, or they're just struggling in that category of the ACT. So Tech Award. So Tech Award can be used to pursue an associate's degree, a vocational degree, a certification, an occupational vocational certificate. It can be used for any of those. So there are TOPS Tech approved programs and TOPS Tech approved schools. So if you go to our website, there's a list of TOPS Tech approved schools and TOPS Tech approved programs. The student does have to enroll at a TOPS Tech approved school in a TOPS Tech approved program to receive this award. It's a 2-year award, and if the student's degree path requires them to go to school in the summer, we'll pay for them to go to school in the summer. However, it's not a requirement for them to go to school in the summer. So in order to apply for TOPS, students have two options. They can either do the TOPS online application, which would only apply them for TOPS, or they can do the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. This would be their TOPS application. They would do this their senior year. So either one of these, they would do their senior year. Let me clarify that. But the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. This would be their application for TOPS. This would apply them for federal aid, such as the Pell Grant. This would apply them for other state aid, such as Go Grant, SCOG, things of that nature. This would also apply them for any institutional aid that the colleges or universities have on their side that they can provide to the students based off the information that's on their FAFSA. So the FAFSA kind of like two birds, one stone situation. Okay. The TOPS Online application is their other option. They do not have to do both, it's either or. The TOPS Online application, though, is what it sounds like. It only applies them for TOPS. So we just try to clarify that and let the students know their options. Consent form. So a parent has the right to determine whether their student's personal identifiable information can be released to LASPA and post-secondary education institutions to which their child applies. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with the consent form. So they sign the consent form and you hold on to that, file that away at your school. And then we just need consent to be marked yes in the student transcript system. So this is for our public and private schools, even though I know that the private schools don't require like the consent form to be signed. Yes still has to be marked in the student transcript system. So please note that we need that to be able to receive the high school transcripts to determine the student eligible for TOP. And it can't just be done in like you receive the consent form, it's yes in J campus. We don't have access to J campus or whatever your local school system uses. We need it in the student transcript system. So we need an STS. So please just make sure it's marked yes. If a parent signs it as no, but then the student turns 18 and says, yes, I want you all to have my transcripts, I want to be eligible for TOPS, the student has the option to change that decision. The parent also does too, if they realize, oh, this, is going to qualify my student for TOPS. Let me change that. They definitely have that option. So Student Hub, I just want to point out how great Student Hub accounts are. So we have a Student Hub account with our office, and it allows students and even their parents to create a parent Student Hub, but it allows students or parents to be able to track the student's progress for a TOPS award while in high school and throughout post-secondary education. So just so you guys are aware, once a student turns 18, and they're enrolled full-time as a first-time full-time freshman at a college or university, FERPA laws take into effect. So we can't talk to the parent on behalf of the student without the student being present unless they give consent. So if the student creates a Student Hub account and then the parent creates a Parent Hub account for that student, the student can grant them consent and we can talk to the parent without the student having to, give consent. So whether the student would have to be present or on the phone, maybe they're in class and then the parent's calling and trying to figure out some information on behalf of the student. If we don't have consent, we can't speak to them, which causes for frustration and things of that nature. So we encourage that to start in high school so that way by the time they're in their post-secondary institution, it's already established and taken care of. But the perks of having it while in high school, so they have a TOPS tracker, so they can track their high school courses and their TOPS core GPA. So as you guys are aware, there's only certain courses that we take into account for, and some are calculated on a 4.0 scale, some are calculated on a 5.0 scale. That's a lot for a student to try to keep track of and do some, mental math. Their Student Hub will do it for them. So if they're in a public school, they just need their state ID or their LA Secure ID to register for a Student Hub account. If they're in a private school, it's their social. They register for a Student Hub account. They'll put their name, date of birth, their state ID or their social, and then they will put the school that they attend and they can create a Student Hub account. In that Student Hub account, they will be able to see their highest ACT score or SAT scores that we have on file for them. So if they take it multiple times and they're like, shoot, I don't know if LASPA has my scores on file, they can check there. It will also show their TOPS core curriculum GPA as it stands to date, which no math needed. That's great. It'll also show the courses that they've completed thus far on the TOPS core curriculum or the TOPS Jumpstart curriculum. The ones that they've completed would be in green, and the ones that they haven't completed yet would be in red. And so that's a great way for them to take accountability and track and follow along through their high school journey. And students can create a Student Hub account as early as sophomore year in high school. So that's a great opportunity. So that's what all they can track. Once they're in college, it will allow them to track their hours earned, and it will also allow them to track their top score. I mean, their overall tops cumulative GPA in college, which is a huge deal as well. And if they have to submit anything like an appeal or anything, then of course they would track that as well in their student hub. That's where all communication goes. So whenever we award the student, their award letter is going to be the student hub. If we're sending a warning letter to the student about hours earned or GPA, that's going to be in their student hub account. So we just recommend that they create it because they will just have so much power and be able to track everything. And then that also takes a little bit off your plate so that you can be able to help more students and they can take accountability for themselves. Okay, so I'm briefly going to go over resources. So thank you for sticking with me so long through this presentation. Just going to go over some resources. So for you guys, this is hot off the press. Save the date. We have spring TOPS processing webinars coming up for professional school counselors. We would love to have you. They are going to be virtually. So it's going to be Tuesday, March 25th, Thursday, March 27th, and Friday, March 28th. Times are coming, and we will send out a registration link. So if you are not a part of our counselor communication, I think I do have a QR code in this presentation. So please scan it, sign up so that you can receive the registration links so that you can sign up for our TOPS processing webinars. We're going to go over, common misconceptions, frequently asked questions, frequent errors so that we can help you get ready for your seniors, for the for your graduating seniors for the spring semester. And so that way you can have everything taken care of before your summer break so that you're not having to get emails from me or our office while you are out and then having to deal with it as soon as you get back. So we do have comprehensive advising officers. So they assist any student, any age, anywhere in Louisiana. So this is a free service that can be used. They can help students with FAFSA completion, scholarship searches, scholarship applications. They can help students find additional sources of financial aid, maybe other scholarships that they qualify for. They can also help with match and fit. So if you have a student that comes to you and they're like, I don't know what college I want to go to, or I don't know what major I want to do. They can also help with those kind of things. And so this is a service that's free of charge that we offer. So please encourage your students to take advantage of this. They have so many resources that they can help. And so they follow a student long term throughout the process. So someone other than a parent and maybe other than you, if you feel like sometimes like, you're talking to these students and you're like, man, it would just sound so much better coming from someone else. Please let our comprehensive advising officers work with them, let them hold them accountable, let them follow them through the process and really help them. Scholarship searches can be so overwhelming. Students can, you know, they quit before they even start because they don't know where to look, that it looks scammy, things like that. So we want to be able to help them and help them through that process and leave no money on the table. Student network groups. So LASPA offers Louisiana high school students the opportunity to connect to other high school students who aspire to attend a post-secondary school. So participating students would receive encouragement, resources, social and emotional support as they transition from high school to college, network with professionals for career planning and navigation. It's held on the orientation. You only have to attend it once. So if a student decides they want to attend a student network group, they would do an orientation. It's held on the first Monday each month, and then the group meeting is held on the third Monday of each month at 7 p.m. So they meet virtually. This is a great opportunity for students to network, maybe even talk to professionals in the major that they're interested in, get internship, resources and ideas so that they can, transition and be with peers that are going through the same, life level as them at that moment. And so transitioning from from secondary to post secondary can be scary. And so having peers and students across the state that they can connect with that are going through the same thing. And so this is a great resource. It's also free. Please encourage your students to sign up and do it. It's virtual, so little to no uncomfortable meetings for them. They can, come and interact as much as they want. Please, please, please schedule a LASPA event. All LASPA events are scheduled online. To schedule an event for your high school, you can click on schools, counselor corner, event request form. Please try to schedule them 30 days in advance. If not, we will try to make it work. We also offer virtual office hours to parents and students, but I specifically offer virtual office hours to our counselors specifically. That is a resource to you guys. And we offer both in person and virtual events free of charge. We will come to your school anywhere in Louisiana and help and offer an event free of charge during the day or even after school hours. Next slide. So these are just some examples of, different events that we do. So we do TOPS retention, TOPS and FAFSA seminars. So something similar to what you've seen today. It'll be just geared a little more towards students and parents versus this is more geared towards our counselors. FSAIDs, we can do a student hub completion event. We can do a browse session or a college fair if your school has something like that, or a community event. So we can do all of these free of charge to you. No cost, daytime or evening. So this is that blast email list that I told you guys about. Please scan the QR code and sign up if you aren't a part of our email list already. Check your junk spam folder for emails to make sure that it's not blocked by your district. Please make sure it's not blocked by if you're on your school laptop, just make sure it's not blocked by any security that they have. We send all of it through Constant Contact, and we send one once a month with like updates, different information that we know and hear about. And so please sign up if you are not a part of it already. You can connect with us on social media. So we have Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and we have Instagram. We also do a lot of lives on YouTube. So please connect with us. That's where we post, update on information. For instance, changes in, federal guidelines with aid and how that affects us. We share that information. We share scholarship information. Any updates or changes to TOPS will also be there as well. So this is Lex. Lex is our virtual assistant. Lex is available 24/7 to answer questions about TOPS. If the student gets a little more in the weeds for Lex or a little too specific or request to speak to a live agent, Lex will connect them with a live agent. Of course, if they are doing that after hours, it would be the next business day during business hours that a agent would get notified. Our website is mylaspa.la.gov. Students and parents can email our general email with any questions about TOPS, TOPS retention requirements, TOPS eligibility requirements, anything in between that, or about any of our other programs, such as MJ or anything like that. They can email custserve@la.gov. If they have FAFSA specific questions, they can email gofafsa@la.gov. Again, we have virtual office hours for FAFSA completion for parents and students. We have virtual office hours for parents and students for TOPS, MJ, and any of our other award programs. I also offer virtual office hours for our counselors, specifically to you guys. You have your own, you don't have to compete with parents and students. You have your own office hours that you can sign up with me, and myself and or my colleague Rhonda will assist you with any questions, comments, or concerns you have on the counselor side. So any questions? And then this is our email, laspa.counselors@la.gov. Please write that down. Please use it. I encourage you guys to use it. You can email custserve@la.gov and your question may or may not get answered or may or may not get forwarded to me. It will get answered, but I can answer it quicker and make sure that I get the email versus it might take a little bit for me to get that email. So if you email custserve, so please email laspa.counselors@la.gov, and then that way we can make sure we're responding to you in a timely fashion and getting you the most accurate and up-to-date information. And I get the laspa.counselor emails versus custserve. We do have intake and assistance officers that are great. They assist with all of that, but I know more counselor specific questions and issues, and I know how to address them quicker and just more timely. They have a lot more emails and, they're dealing with parents and students in the general public versus this email is just for high school counselors, staff, and school administrators. So please note that. Okay, any questions?
Hailey, thank you so much. We do have a couple of questions in the
Yeah.
chat. And while I read those out to you, or if you want to take a look at those, I want to remind our attendees that you can add your questions either in the chat or you can add them in the Q&A. I would prefer you add them to the Q&A just so that we don't miss them in the chat if other conversations begin to happen. So going back to one earlier from Jessica, it said, will financial literacy and computer science be considered part of the core units for OPH?
So it will be, so financial literacy and computer science will be, but that will be for our financial literacy will count for our current freshmen, so our cohort of 2028 financial literacy, and then computer science will be required for our current 8th graders. So yes, it will, but not yet. So our juniors and seniors are okay, and our sophomores have the option to take computer science in place of their foreign language, but that's not a requirement yet. So
okay. Also, is there any insight on the impact of executive orders on federal and state grants and loans?
okay, so I do know that it, as far as we are aware, it will not affect the Pell Grant, and it will absolutely not affect TOPS. I am going to drop a link. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to drop a link to our website because that's where we're going to update that information. So as we get more information, we are going to update it on our website. So just give me 1 second because I'm going to drop that for you guys so that you guys have that available. Let's see. Because we recently got this question from someone else. And of course, once we heard about it, we wanted to have all the answers because we knew those were going to be questions from our students, parents, counselors. Of course, it's a fear. So let's see if I can drop the link for you guys because that didn't copy like I wanted it to. So give me 1 second. Okay. So this is for you guys. So like I said, we've launched a dedicated webpage to provide students, families, and stakeholders with up-to-date information on how the pause in federal aid may impact LASFA administered scholarship and grants programs. And you can visit this website for updates, guidance, and resources. But as of right now, Pell Grant is not affected by this. Student loans are not affected by this, and definitely not TOPS.
Okay. There is another question. You may or may not know this, but what is the legislation that outlines students have the opportunity to choose if they do or not want to have the college credit count? Is this a law that all universities have to follow, and all students who took dual enrollment get the opportunity to say if they do or don't want the course credit to be transcribed on the university side? Or can the university decide if they do or do not want to afford the students this opportunity to choose?
So I would have to get with our legal team about that and see what, I don't know if there's legislation or if it's just law. I do know that like once they complete college courses, they have to legally like submit that information to other colleges and to us. I'm just not sure the legislation on that or like the law on that, but I can definitely, great question. What I'll do is I'll get with our legal team and I will get them to answer that question and I'll share that with you, Danielle, if that's okay. And then if you can maybe send out that information to everyone that's registered so that we can make sure we're just providing the most accurate information. I just don't want to tell you guys incorrectly, but I will get that information for you guys.
For that. Are there any more questions? Let's see here. I think we got all the Q&A, all of the chat. Awesome. I'll turn it back over to Marshall.
Great.
Thanks, Danielle. Thank you, Hailey, for all of the time you put into that presentation. We really appreciate it. So speaking of money, we want to ensure you know about SACAC's free access membership. So the key details to remember as you see all the information on the slide are that you can join SACAC, the Southern Association for College Admission Counseling, for free if you're a public high school or community-based organization at college access counselor. So if you've got questions about SACAC or about the free access membership, feel free to contact any of us. I'm happy to talk to you. Danielle's happy to talk to you. Monique, who's on here, was happy to talk to you, I'm sure. Or you can review the document that Danielle is probably posting in the chat as I'm talking, because there's a Google Doc where all the information is going to be available to you as well. we'd love to talk to you about why SACAC membership is a great opportunity. That being said, we're going to move on to our next presentation. It's on counselor well-being. It was created by Elizabeth Sandridge. Unfortunately, Elizabeth is not here with us today. She's giving extra attention to her school community as they navigate a student tragedy. Please keep Elizabeth and the St. Thomas More Catholic High School community in your thoughts and prayers. In these uncertain times, locally and globally, it's even more important to check on ourselves and to check on each other. So today, Shannon Barrio and Alex Gonzalez are going to be presenting. Shannon's the director of college counseling at Metairie Park Country Day School. She's a licensed professional counselor and a proven leader in the college admission profession. Shannon serves on the board of directors for the Southern Association of College Admission Counseling, National Association for College Admission Counseling Admission Practices Committee, and the Drexel University Counselor Advisory Board. Alex is the Associate Director of College Counseling at Isidore Newman School. Alex serves as a member of the Executive Committee of the Board of Directors for SACAC, as one of the Member Relations co-chairs. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shannon and Alex. Thank you all both for being here and taking over.
Thanks, Marshall. It's nice to be with you. I have to give all the credit for this presentation to Elizabeth Sandridge. She put this together and handed it off, and I think it speaks to our community, both the ability to ask for help and know that your network is there to build you up. But yeah, I think we ask about who was in the room a little bit, but maybe how long, answer the second and third question, how long you've worked in the field. Maybe get an idea of what your caseload is. How many students do you work with each year? I'd love to know kind of the wide range of counseling that's happening within our region before we kick it off. All right, I guess we'll get started. So lots of experience in the room for sure. Okay, we'll dive into the presentation. The first thing that we're going to talk about is burnout awareness and kind of the different types of stress and anxiety, and how we go from being stressed out to overwhelmed. And so stress is normal for all of us. It's very typical. It's typically short term. I know for this field, we kind of in the school year have different projects that we work towards. I know for me, the fall is typically very stressful. It kind of gets a little bit better in the winter break. And then we kind of kick up again with course selection starting in the spring. So we have these cycles of stress. But those are kind of brought on by external factors. I know that, all of our bodies respond to stress differently, but typically we can manage stress. That burnout really evolves over time, especially if you've been working in this field for a long time. We absorb a lot of energy from outside sources. We have our administrators, our districts. We're working with colleagues. We have student and family trauma that we experience. So that burnout is kind of a building moment. It's not your typical stress, but it makes you feel depleted, disengaged. Maybe it makes you feel like you need a break. Maybe you're missing more work. I know that burnout can lead to a lot of attendance issues with both students and faculty. So we really need to pay attention to that. And then of course there's anxiety. And that's where you're more into a mental health crisis, where you are unable to maybe complete all your tasks. You start to doubt yourself. And you have persistent worry. So I think the difference between this range, stress is manageable, anxiety becomes a little bit less manageable, and that worry can interfere with our ability to do this work. So when that stress becomes overwhelming, we can often experience compassion fatigue. And compassion fatigue, it's a psychological condition that occurs when those who you provide care or support to, have so much trauma and you're absorbing that you become overwhelmed and start to experience symptoms that are similar to those that you're counseling. And this can be caused by many things. I think we're all in this field because we have a lot of empathy, but absorbing so much can be difficult. A prolonged exposure to this stress and other people's traumatic stories and experiences, or witnessing or hearing about suffering, can be overwhelming. Sometimes I know personally, sometimes I feel powerless and how to help families and students. So that can be overwhelming. And then, of course, we all come to the field, or we all have our own personal experience with trauma or stress, or, we can be triggered in some ways by the stories that our families and students are telling us. So it can be, it can bring up our own issues. And there are lots of signs of compassion fatigue. I think one of the big things that counselors often experience is like a reduced ability to empathize, or a reduced compassion level. Maybe we are on edge, or maybe we have the less ability to kind of feel the experience that our students and families are experiencing. Oftentimes it's difficult to concentrate or make decisions, or kind of paralyzed in that. And then, of course, you might experience changes in mood or behavior. I think when we talk about health issues, one of the big things that we see happen with burnout and anxiety is headaches. I think that happens a lot, and insomnia. So a lot of our sleep issues are then kind of perpetuating that cycle of being tired the next day, and maybe our mood is a little bit short, or it's difficult to kind of engage and collaborate. So how do we fight this fatigue? I took a look at some of these surveys myself, and actually the first one that's mentioned, it's a compassion, satisfaction, fatigue self-test for helpers. It's like a Likert scale from 0 to 5. There's 66 questions. And I found it really helpful. I did it myself yesterday. And at the end, there are 3 sections, and it kind of allows you to assess yourself. It has your potential for compassion being satisfactory, and it gives you kind of a number, a range. It assesses your risk for burnout and your risk for compassion fatigue. So I found this self-check quite helpful, actually. It didn't take too long, and it just had me thinking about my own work and my experience, counseling students and families. And in this moment right here, where, we're kind of going into a lot of, I know for me, I'm thinking course selection and like AP testing coming up and things like that. So this was a great self-assessment. The Traumatology Institute has a lot of different resources. I did the Make Peace with Sleep because I struggle with sleeping, and there were some resources that I thought I could use with students. There was a section called Unhooking Old Habits, and then that was kind of assessing kind of some of the poorer habits that we have that might contribute to our stress, and for me that might be staying up too late, not shutting off, and then kind of that fatigue and tiredness carrying over into the next day. For self-efficacy, does your principal really know your job? We'll talk a little bit later about advocating for yourself, especially in the workplace. But I think this is really important to take note of. I know in my own institution, we do have a lot of autonomy, but sometimes that disconnection has me feeling frustrated because I feel like sometimes they don't really know what I'm doing and what I'm managing. So for me, what I found helpful is I started a spreadsheet, and it's by year. And so it goes back maybe 5 years, but it kind of documents what I'm doing throughout the year. I also use it to help store my communication with families, or slides or Canva presentations. And so they're easy to access from year to year. So it has taken some stress off of my daily work, but it also allows me to really give myself praise and recognize how much work we're actually doing in this job. And then, of course, be able to use that as a document to inform my upper school principal, or if I'm in contract negotiations and the topic comes up, I have like an easy access reference. So that's been helpful for me. And I think just reminding ourselves to be compassionate. I know it's hard to give yourself affirmations, but I do need to remind myself sometimes that we are doing good work in this field, and our jobs are important and we help a lot of people. So kind of just cheering yourself on, and then we'll talk later about kind of your network, but also building yourself, surrounding yourself with people that will also cheer you on and help out when you're having a hard time. So the next 3 slides that Elizabeth put together are different paths to wellness. I am going to take a couple of minutes, maybe 5 minutes, and allow you to go through the paths to wellness on an individual level of responsibility. The second 2 options are going to be like a supervisory level of responsibility and organizational level of responsibility. But for me, I really thought this was a great check-in. So if we could have, let's see, it's 10:23, maybe until just before 11 o'clock, to just take some time to breathe and maybe journal out some of your thoughts before we move on to the next part of the conversation. That would be great. Thank you for taking some time to think and breathe. I think we don't often get to take breaks. So it's nice just to kind of think about where we are today and kind of do regular check-ins with how we are doing, especially in the workplace. I love the question about job satisfaction and doing those spot checks. I know we always, not always, but sometimes have doubts about, is this the right place for me? But I think that it's important to reflect and think about kind of your goals and your values, and if the work that we're doing is aligned with our personal goals, and then make adjustments to the wellness plan. So keep this paper, print it out, do monthly check-ins with yourself. I think it's really helpful. And then when you get the slide deck, you'll also have the option to look into your, your supervisory level of responsibility, and then your organization as a whole, which often can times feel like we don't have a lot of control over. But I found the questions helpful to just like, what are the topics that I need to be thinking about on the supervisory and organizational level? So we'll skip those next two slides, and then we'll go into kind of personal self-care. There's lots of different types of self-care. I think that we know that we should all be getting more physical activity. I think that's hard to do sometimes, but kind of moving. I know for me and my colleague, we walk around campus quite a bit, or try to take breaks from being in our office. If that is possible in your space, that's helpful, even if it's just extending your walk to the bathroom a little bit longer, just to take a lap around campus, but just to take a minute away from your computer is super helpful. Of course, emotional self-care. I know that it's hard to be away from the building oftentimes. And obviously, when we're physically ill or we have a diagnosed illness, it's easy to stay home, of course. But sometimes when we're feeling that burnout and the stress, we still power through. And then just kind of thinking about the days that were offered as far as sick days and time away from the building, and giving yourself permission to take mental health days, to stay home and take care of yourself so that you're able to maybe take a walk, eat a healthy meal, or connect with some of your people without the guilt of feeling like, I don't have this physical illness, I need to be at school. And I know it's sometimes difficult with the things that we have going on, but to really give yourself that permission to take a moment if you need it has been helpful for me. I love the social self-care, having a network. I know SACAC has been wonderful to meet people. My partner, Danielle, I know meets with a group of counselors across the country for check-ins every now and then, or finding that that one co-worker on campus. I know I have a friend on campus that will allow me to talk and talk and talk without any sort of judgment. And sometimes I need that. So just find out who your person is on campus, or maybe tap into the SACAC network to, have a community of counselors to support you. And then I think it's also important to check your school district's mental health benefits, or your insurance benefits if you're at a private school. Oftentimes there's funds available, and even if they're not specifically on your health benefits, often districts or organizations will have funds available to support counseling sessions, or an online check-in with a therapist, or meet those mental health needs that you have. So for professional self-care, I kind of hit on some of these. I definitely think finding a network is important. I don't think it's always as easy as I'm making it sound, but just showing up to events, and even just being on the Zoom, maybe you recognize a name the next time you're in person on a college campus, or networking somewhere. Take the opportunity to go to college lunches if you can. Again, that's going to be part of advocating for yourself with your administration sometimes. Building boundaries, that can be hard for us when we are helpers by nature, and saying no can be hard, but kind of really assessing if you can take on a project, or go to an event. I think saying no takes practice, but also you can tell someone when you're building boundaries, maybe that you need some more time to think about your answer, and so that you can really tap into, do I have the capacity to offer myself in this way? But I think that takes practice and is super healthy. And then advocating for your role, we have a lot of opportunities to kind of get together online or even in person for like college luncheons, or perhaps you're able to go on a college fly-in. Those are, having the data to support, like we talked about earlier, what am I doing, and all the things that we do in our roles, kind of advocating for this other benefit to be able to have experiences that are not on campus. One thing that we implemented here, and I know that it's not possible in every community, but we advocated for our teachers who write heavy letters of recommendation to get a writing day. And for us, that letter number is 10 letters or more, and then they can work out time to either have a half a day or kind of ranges on what they're able to do. But that's been really helpful for teachers. We also advocated for that in our college counseling department. I will say that it's harder to take those days, even if they are available to you, than it might seem, but just knowing that they're there for me sometimes reduces the stress load, that I don't even need to take them, just knowing that they're available. So when we talk about advocating for your role, those are some examples of how you might be able to do that. So Elizabeth put together amazing resources. So I've been able to dig into a couple of them, but you're going to have this resource in the slide deck when you get back, and you can kind of dig into it on your own. When I was talking to Alex Gonzalez about the presentation, she had mentioned that she works in small groups with a book called Onward. It's Cultivating Emotional Resilience in Educators. And so I am going to hand it over to Alex to talk a little bit about this book, because I was so excited to hear that it follows the rhythms of the school year, and there's month by month action items. And so I believe Alex is doing it in a book club, but I am going to hand it over to Alex to talk about the book Onward.
Well, good morning. So Onward is by Elena Aguilar, and the subtitle is Cultivating Emotional Resilience in Educators. And I was exposed to this book coming off of the COVID pandemic, noting that educators in particular were struggling with resilience and burnout and mental health and wellness. And as a response to that, I was really excited to find this resource. And I think every educator could probably benefit from reading this particular text. It is designed month by month as kind of the peaks and valleys of the school year are modeled. So it starts in June and July and then moves into August, and helps educators navigate through some of the feelings that naturally happen around those times of year, sort of the anticipation and excitement that may be there to kick off a new year in August, to the pits of decision season if you're working in college counseling. And I found it to be personally really meaningful for me, but wanted to do, as so much of this presentation really focused on, look at it in a collaborative way, and lean into building communities of support within our community. So what we have been able to do is essentially create a professional book club. So I meet monthly with a team of educators at my institution. And what's really unique about this opportunity is, one, it's focused pretty much solely on the social and emotional components of being an educator. I do think that professional development often, especially at secondary institutions, tends to lean towards content specific, or pedagogy, how to be a good teacher, all very important. But I really appreciated that this professional development opportunity helps lean into some of the social and emotional elements, the mental health and the well-being piece. I also am collaborating with various departments across campus. So I have as a college counselor, I'm working primarily with our junior and senior students. I am in this professional development book club with teachers from our Green Trees, our lower school program. So teachers of 4 and 5-year-olds. So to be able to collaborate across division in a way that we don't in our often siloed departments, to discuss these really important themes and sort of the ebb and flow of the school year from this lens of social and emotional resilience has been super powerful. So I wanted to share this text as an awesome resource. Thanks for putting it in the chat there. And also point out that sometimes it's these singular resources that can be a springboard into action for building these communities, these networks of support around the idea of mental health and around the idea of creating compassionate and resilient communities. So thanks for the opportunity to plug this awesome text. And if anybody has any questions about the way we've set up our book study or our book club, I'd be more than happy to chat a little bit about that and to see how we could maybe model pushing that out in your communities.
Thank you so much, Shannon and Alex. Shannon, did you have more? I'm sorry, I jumped in. Okay. I did add some of the links that Shannon and Alex mentioned throughout their presentation in the chat, but we will make sure that you all have a copy of the presentation as well so you can follow the links. I think this is a good time. Alex, thank you so much for sharing the book on Word. And Shannon, you also mentioned some of the best practices that you do as far as like taking the longer walk to the restroom. I think this is a good time to share some ideas in the chat about what are some ways that you all build in self-care throughout your day when you're at school. Like, what are some things that you're doing to keep yourself going? What are some resources that you're utilizing? So just pop those into the chat just so that everyone who's here has the opportunity to think about those best practices as well. Long walks. Absolutely, collaborating with our educators across division. So some of you may know, but Shannon and I both work at Metairie Park Country Day School, and we do a lot of programming, as she mentioned, with that spreadsheet. It is full of back-to-back programming. And this year, we sought out other people and their expertise on campus to lead some of those sessions that we do. For example, with our juniors, we do a essay workshop. And to prepare for that essay workshop, we brought in one of our colleagues who is really into the improv scene to do some improv and chatting with our juniors. So that was a lot of fun, but that also took, I just realized my camera's not on, guys. That also took some of the burden off of us for preparing for that day, and we could give our attention to something else. Absolutely, reaching out to community, going to bed early. Teach us your ways, Julia. Time blocking lunch, absolutely. I have lunch blocked on my calendar every day. Eating lunch outside my office. Great, Kate. Awesome. We'll take maybe about just one more minute to see some other shared ideas in the chat, and then I'll turn it back over to Marshall. Great plug, Alex, joining my SACAC special interest group for community building. There's so many. You can join school counselors, independent counselors. There's the different affinity groups based off like race and culture. So many SIGs that you can join within SACAC. Coming in early. My great colleague, Shannon, brought me this gratitude book. And this is actually the first thing I do when I sit at my desk. Absolutely. All right, Marshall, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. So I actually think that after this, what we're going to do, and we can call it a little bit of self-care if we need to, is we'll take a little bit of a break. We're actually running slightly ahead of time. And so we're going to call it 12 minutes, I think, right? Danielle, is that the timer you've got set up, ready to go? Give you time to run to the restroom, maybe get a cup of coffee, something like that. But Danielle's going to kick that off. And then when we come back, I'll talk to you all a little bit about some of the opportunities in SACAC, and then we'll have our last presentation and we'll wrap up. So Danielle's going to get our timer going, and we'll see you all back here in 12 minutes.
Is that it?
All right, I think that was our 12 minutes. So hopefully, everybody has made it back to join us, and we can roll into Danielle. We're gonna kind of jump ahead and do some of the slides about SACAC, and then come back to uh, our last presentation, right?
Yes, sorry, I am, okay, yes. And before we have our last presentation, Hailey does have 2 updates about the FAFSA that she is able to share. So she's gonna come
Okay,
now and do this.
Yes,
that's
sorry,
terrific.
y'all. I just wanted to pop back in and touch again on the FAFSA real quick. A couple changes that happened this year was that they did add the parent wizard tool. So for students and parents trying to decide who would be considered a contributor on a student's FAFSA, they do have that now. So there's a lot of situations and scenarios. So it will help the student and the parent determine who is considered a contributor on the FAFSA. So that is change number one. Another one is for that direct loans only question, the one that's like, my parent, it's worded confusing, and it's like basically asking the student, like, will your parent refuse to give information, or are you only interested in loans? They changed that to default to no, because students, the way it was worded, they were getting confused and they were answering yes, and it was causing a lot of issues and causing students to go in and have to, like, then do a correction on their FAFSA, add their parent as a contributor. So they did default that question to no. And so that's been super helpful. They have also worked on updating all the bugs from last year. So it has been running pretty smoothly. And then the last thing is next year for that demographics part for the student. If you've been helping any students with completion of FAFSA, you will realize that they have a question that's like asking student demographics, like male, female, I prefer not to answer. They are changing for next year's FAFSA. So not this current one, but next year's, it will only ask male or female for those. So I just wanted to provide those updates to you guys.
Thank you so
Thank
much, Hailey. We appreciate it. All right, let's talk a little bit about some of the opportunities we have in SACAC. And the first thing we want to talk about is the Extending the Dream grant. So as I pull up what I was actually going to say, there we go. So with the Extending the Dream grant, I'm sorry, um, you've got some awesome opportunities to basically fund uh, a program that is going to support students in the college search process. And so, I mean, you can see some of the examples, right? College tours, clocks and calculators for ACTs, workshops, materials for college access programs for events. There's really a lot of opportunity there, and we would love to encourage you to apply. You can see the timeline right down under there. So please take a look at that and consider the Extending the Dream grant as a way to really support some of the opportunities to maybe do some things that you all wish you have done but haven't been able to get the money to do. Um, Beyond that, then we've got the Counselor Participation Fund, and the Counselor Participation Fund is an amazing opportunity to basically pay for you as a public school counselor or a member of a community-based organization, possibly to attend one of the professional development opportunities coming up through SACAC. It looks like Monique just put the link to the Council Participation Fund application in the chat. So please go to that if you're interested. The Sweet Tea Tour, which is a tour of colleges every summer. There's summer seminar. There's some great professional development opportunities. And of course, then also the SACAC annual conference, which is coming up and is in Atlanta this year. So for many of us, we can even find direct flights. Let's see, I'm skipping past. I've forced Danielle to just jump through about 3 slides. So you can go backwards to summer seminar. There's the timeline for the Counselor Participation Fund, right? So conference, we're already too late to apply, but for the Counselor Participation Fund, you can still apply for all of the summer programs like summer seminar. And so you can see kind of the details here. It's hosted in Nashville this year for at Belmont and Vanderbilt, and it's a workshop for people in working at high schools. in the college counseling process. And so please take a look there and see that it does have a fee right there. It is cheaper if you're a member. And remember, you can be a SACAC member if you're a public school counselor at no cost to you. And then you can apply for the Counselor Participation Fund grant to possibly pay for you to attend. So please, if this is something you're interested in, don't let money be the limit. There are a bunch of different college admission workshops that are coming up. You can see the QR code there. And so take a look at the link there on that QR code, because there are a variety of different opportunities that are designed specifically for high school students, and specifically many of them for students from underrepresented and underserved populations. And so it's something that SACAC provides because we want to be a resource for students who might not have access to as many resources as we wish that they did. All right, now we can talk about the annual conference. Um, and the SACAC annual conference is just it's in Atlanta this year, and it really has a great list of sessions. There are opportunities to do college tours before and after. There are sessions for people who are new to the field, sessions for people who've been in it for a long time. It is really a tremendous opportunity. We'd love for you to join SACAC. We'd love for you to come to the conference, and especially for many of you who are on the high school side and who work in public schools, it's really tremendous opportunities both to get some professional development, but also to make some connections. And, we talked earlier in that self-care about building your network and having a community. And this is a great opportunity coming to the conference to build that community and to make some of the connections that, can be a resource and that will, also just be a friend. And so we'd love any of us who have been to SACAC before. I think that many of us have. We'd love to talk to you about the opportunities that exist at annual conference. All right, Danielle, what am I missing? I feel like I'm just running through, but
I think that
did I hit everything?
Yes, you hit everything, and Monique has added all of the links for the different programs that we talked about in the chat. So check those out.
Awesome. Thank you, Monique. Okay, so then if our last presenter is ready, so we actually asked our counseling community what you all wanted to hear about, and you proposed a unique topic for our final session. We're glad to hear from Yetunde Rubenstein about counseling LGBTQIA students through the college admission process. Yetunde Daniels Rubenstein is a dedicated counselor and educator passionate about empowering individuals and groups to achieve meaningful growth. As the founder and principal consultant of Arising Educational Consultants, she leads with partnership, empathy, humor, humility, and trust, creating inclusive spaces where dialogue thrives and transformation begins. Where dialogue thrives. In addition to your consulting work, Yetunde is a lead instructor in UCLA's College Counseling Certificate Program, where she mentors future professionals in the field. She's pursuing her EDD at the University of San Francisco, deepening her expertise and commitment to education. She holds a BA in psychology and an MSED in personal counseling, a certified SEED seeking educational equity and diversity facilitator. Yetunde skillfully guides challenging conversations around diversity and inclusion, fostering open communication and collaboration. Her ability to navigate complex topics has made her a trusted partner for schools, organizations, and communities seeking lasting change. Yetunde, thank you so much for being here with us and leading this conversation, and I'm going to let you take it from here.
Okay. Thank you so much, Marshall, and thank you so much to everyone at SACAC who is coming together today to be in community. I have learned so much, and I have been so uplifted to be back in conversation. And as Shannon and Alex shared, to really grow as a professional. I love the slides and resources that they offered. I was taking notes and looking at resources for myself too. So thank you all again for inviting me to speak with you. And I wanted to just begin our conversation by grounding our understanding in really the American School Counselor Association ethical standards. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but a few that jump out that speaks directly to our work, specifically that counselors have an obligation to students to be treated with dignity and respect as unique individuals. Counselors foster and affirm all students in their identity and psychosocial development. And counselors respect students' and families' values, beliefs, and cultural background, as well as students' sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, and exercise great care to avoid imposing personal biases, beliefs, and values rooted in one's religion, culture, and ethnicity. So as counselors gather today, these are the three of the main points that I always come back to in terms of our shared understanding coming from the American School Counselor Association ethical guidelines. As I said, I'm happy to be here with you, and I'm really proud to be a fellow educator, mentor, counselor, coach, et cetera, et cetera. So let's jump right in. Next slide, please. A brief overview of what we're going to be talking about. It's really important to know this is not going to be an exhaustive presentation. I am touching on a few key issues, but you can always ask questions in the chat and I can help define things further. First, we're going to define the acronym of LGBTQIA. Next, challenges and perspectives from students. We're going to get some insights from GLSEN, best practice for counselors. If we have enough time, we'll do a case study. We'll think about some key resources. Again, not at all exhaustive. And if we have time, and let's ask a few questions. As was suggested earlier, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A so we won't miss them. And I will hopefully get to them by the end of our time today. Thank you. Beginning with the acronyms. Now, a couple things to remember. As with life, the acronyms and understanding of the LGBTQIA community is evolving. And depending on how old you are, what generation you're in, what it means to be in this community and what it means, what each letter signifies can vary a bit. So I'm going with the more generally understood and shared terms as a foundational understanding of the current definitions. Again, it is generational, evolving. There isn't a right or wrong depending on the age and cultural context. And you may hear different terms and definitions used. Today, generally, gay and queer is used as an often interchangeably and as a contemporary term to describe everyone within the community. One term not included here is 2S, signifying two-spirited, to describe persons who embody both masculine and feminine spirits, but used specifically within Native communities and by Native communities, not from outsiders coming in. And this does not address non-binary people's attractions, but if you think about non-binary, think about the gender spectrum as male, female, and non-binary that spectrum is collapsed. Okay, let's jump right into the definitions. So let's stay on the definition slide for a second. L for lesbian, a woman who's attracted to other women. Gay, often referred to, but as I mentioned, can be used more generally. Attracted to people of the same gender. Bisexual, a person who's attracted to more than one gender. Transgender, a person whose gender identity differs from their sex assigned at birth. Queer or questioning, broad term, as I mentioned before, but also for a person who is exploring their gender and sexual identity. Intersex, the person who is born with biological traits that do not fit typical male or female categories. And asexual, aromantic or ally. Asexual, a person who experiences little to no sexual attraction. Aromantic, a person who experiences little to no romantic attraction also. And ally, a supporter of LGBTQIA rights. So again, these are a much more generalized understanding of the various terms. Next slide. Uh-oh, what happened? I'm not sure why your slide just went blue. Okay. So this slide refers to, so again, having an understanding of here is what the definitions are is really, really important for your own personal understanding as a counselor. And it is there not to necessarily for you to assign those definitions to a student as you're encountering them. It is up to the student to self-identify to you, and based on how they have shared who they are is how you will then address that student in the best worlds. So thinking about what unique challenges, while we know all of our students and humans face challenges daily, it is important, and I want to kind of point to unique challenges faced by students who identified, whether or not they have shared their status publicly. That's really, really important to remember. So within the high school space, it's very important to remember that students are evolving into who they are going to be as people. So it is more likely than not that you will have students who have not yet either publicly declared, which they never have to publicly make any declarations about who they are and how they want to live, but whether or not they're publicly acknowledged within the school system or they are not, it is important to know here are some challenges that they're experiencing. But it helps you to think about how to collaborate with other people within your school community, within the general community that students may need some assistance with. I think it was mentioned earlier, the importance of collaboration, and here is another instance with that. It's when you think about the college admission process, something that students may not articulate to you right up front is their concerns about the campus climate and safety. As students or they may not even be thinking about it, but it's important for you to remember as a counselor that not even if a campus within the school community, within the college and university community is a wonderfully welcoming space, those spaces exist within a certain geographic location with specific additional challenges or supports. So it's really important to understand that students may be thinking about, will I or will I not be safe? What is the climate like for me? Whether or not I choose to identify publicly or not. Are there going to be supports for me? Again, it is really the same across the board, but is pretty unique in terms of safety for students within this community. Also within this community are students who are navigating name changes and preferred names in their applications. It's interesting to see how that will change or not change over time. But if a student has either changed their name within your school community and that has been acknowledged, but now they're dealing with their official documents that need to be submitted to a college or university community, there is going to be some tension and sometimes a real psychological issue that the student needs to encounter that they may have been able to ignore throughout most of their high school experience because the school has accepted the name change that a different name that the student is using. So be prepared to support them in that way. It's really also important to think about students' healthcare. For many students, not every student, again, we're not generalizing. One of the things they may be thinking about is, what does healthcare look like for me? Who are the physicians that I'm going to be encountering when I get to campus? Will there be folks who are able to treat me, who can be compassionate, empathetic with who I am as a full person, as a full human, and be able to respect that full humanity? They may not be able to articulate that to you quite yet, but it's important for you to know that it is a potential concern, even if the student hasn't named it quite yet. Within the financial aid and scholarships pieces, as kind of mentioned earlier, You will see more and more opportunities where students need to list or not be able to access financial aid opportunities, and that becomes another psychological concern. Will I be losing out on opportunities that are available to me because of my identity? And you can assure them that if for as many that may not be available to you, that there are many, many other avenues and resources that you can tap into. But many of the scholarships that are readily shared with students seems to only seems to have a much more narrow scope than many students would like. But as a counselor, it's important for you to understand that there are many other opportunities and avenues for students to be able to access financial aid and scholarship opportunities for who they are. And finally, I touched on this before, but this is different. Now, when they arrive to a college campus, who will be there what are the supports available to students? So not just in the larger geographical or local community, but on the campus, day to day, what does life look like for this student? Again, named and unnamed challenges, important for you to know as a counselor. Next slide, please. Thank you. And I wanted to remind us all, and I think sometimes in the murkiness of our daily work and thinking about all the challenges, how are we going to be able to support and uplift? Oh my gosh, there's so much going on. It's really important to remember the assets that not just students within this community, but all of our students bring, and to think of the assets that they are. They are joyful, they are excited about their future. They are, yes, within the midst of all their concerns, but they're really eager and excited to learn. And these are your leaders. So how can you best double down on ways to support everything that these students will bring to campus and help them amplify and navigate really in beautiful ways all of the assets that they will bring to a campus while supporting the needs that they will have. Next slide, please. So in thinking about what does it look like for students, I wanted to bring to your attention this GLSEN, the National School Climate Survey that was conducted and released in 2021. A 2024 study is underway, and hopefully we'll get those that will be announced soon. But please keep this as a resource for you to access for a lot of different reasons. But the GLSEN National School Climate Survey surveyed over 22,000 students, LGBTQ identified students across 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, American Samoa, and Guam. Participants were in grades 6 through 12 and attended different types of schools, including public, private, and charter institutions. The survey was conducted online in April and August. So if you remember the times we were in of 2021. And as I mentioned, the 2024 report is pending. They're actually still collecting data from students. It is a much, much longer, much more exhaustive report, but I wanted to grab a few highlights to share with you today of what students are reporting. High levels of victimization. Over 80% of students reported some sort of verbal harassment due to their sexual orientation or gender identity. Students also reported limited access to supportive resources. Schools often lack inclusive curricula, LGBTQ student organizations, and trained staff to address their concerns. Students reported severe mental health impacts. So increased exposure to discrimination highlighted the lack of support, which contributed to higher rates of depression among students. This report also highlighted educational barriers. So LGBTQ students reported higher discrimination, which likely led to lower GPAs and school avoidant behaviors and activities, which affect obviously their college aspirations and preparation. I'm going to pause there. If you think about, again, it is in the larger scheme of what's happening within your school community, and you think about the bright minds waiting to, navigating your school communities, waiting to see what comes next, all of the possibilities that are beyond their secondary school experience. And you think about this quick snapshot of what are they facing within our school communities. And some of the things that they highlight is that adults will often ignore instances of verbal abuse. Adults still, the students will report that they were in earshot of an adult while something negative was happening to them, and the adult ignored them, which then led them to feel unsafe in that space, which makes a lot of sense. But if you think about the cumulative effect of being ignored, not and having a clear sense of, when I am being victimized within this school community, adults will actively ignore what is happening to me. It makes sense while we have higher mental health impacts for this community, while we have greater educational barriers where there shouldn't be that one for bright, engaged students. So I want you to keep that in mind. Really importantly, and great for you to know, the GLSEN report also includes state-specific snapshots. So while there's a general school climate survey, you can isolate directly to what's happening within your state to see what are the instances of, are we seeing within our state higher reports of victimization? Is it as high as 80%? Is it lower? Is it higher? So I would love for you to take some time to engage that report. Thank you. Next slide, please. So when we consider, in light of what I just shared with the GLSEN report, how do we as counselors, and as someone who spent 20 years in schools, I still put myself in that space, how do we as counselors navigate this in the best way possible? So I've got some quick, hopefully important, and I know not easy to implement, but I want you to think about 5 easy ways to do this. Create and cultivate an inclusive and affirming environment. So think about your space, the spaces you occupy as a counselor. What does your room look like? What does your reporting look like? What does your intake look like when you are collecting information from students? Are you allowing students to tell you the name on their official documents as well as their preferred name? Are you allowing them to, and then honoring if a student says, this is my official name on my document, but this is my preferred name, when you are calling the student for a meeting, when you are addressing them in the hallway, are you using that preferred name, or are you using the name on the birth certificate? If a student in an intake form that you may have received, are you allowing the student to say, this is my life experience, this is what I am encountering, and this is what I would like to share with you? And then again, are you honoring the information that is shared by those students? In thinking about your presentations, is your language expansive? Do you only say male, female? Do you only say mom and dad? Are you allowing different types of experiences to be included as an automatic way of encountering students and their families? Or are you, in your language, to students and families, repeatedly saying to them, these are the only ways of being in the world that we acknowledge and will be respected here? Thinking about your physical space, what are you projecting back to students? If you were choosing to put up posters, if you're choosing to put up emblems, what is it that you're telling students as they come into your space? That you are somebody who can be trusted to listen and affirm students, or will you be rejective of who they are? For number two, thinking about guiding students towards, back to my earlier point, guiding students towards LGBTQ friendly colleges. Using the Pride Index, one of the resources I'll show later, not as the only place, but as you are on conducting college campus visits, as was stated earlier, when you go to your SACAC events, are you going on the college campus and speaking to folks in support offices to see what does it feel like for students? Is there a student you have in mind as you're speaking to the support officer to think about where will my student fit? How will they feel when they arrive to campus? And then as you're navigating a college building list experience for the students, are you considering who has the student shared with me they are? What are their priorities? How am I collaborating with this student to find places that makes the most sense in terms of being a friendly, not necessarily, we don't need necessarily so cozy that the student doesn't grow, but a place where the student isn't going to be victimized. We want them to persist and thrive. Number three, advocate for equitable admission practices. So there are a series of ways we can do that through NACAC, through SACAC, through your school, within the administration. Yes, I completely understand and know that can sometimes be challenging within a space. So how can you collaborate with other educators within your community to create equitable admission practices? So as you are again, thinking about your intake forms, as you're thinking about the presentations that you give to students and families, are you in making sure you're including ways that every student is able to see themselves and you're not excluding students purposely in the language you're using? When you're inviting colleges and universities to come and speak to students, are you making sure they understand to be as inclusive in their language as possible? If you think back to the challenges that students face, often in silence, how are you ensuring that in your work in the college going process, you are not contributing to that victimization and you're not contributing to increasing the negativity of their mental health? And number four, as counselors, it feels like it's a no-brainer, but it is important to have a list of referrals. So as you provide holistic support throughout the process, for many students, if they, depending on the trajectory of their high school experience, let's say 6th through 12th grade experience, they may have not need to encounter themselves in such, and as we know, in the college process, it can become a heavy psychological process. And sometimes for students who have silently faced many of the challenges I articulated earlier, now they are faced with the reality of, I am now going into the world, positive and negative. That is not something that you can necessarily support entirely on your own, but you can help students find resources within the community, online resources that were provided, similar to that were provided earlier today for us. How can I ensure I'm at least acknowledging to the student, yes, I know this can be heavy. Here are some things that additional resources that I think you can access. Here are some additional counselors you may be able to access outside of our school system. Here are some organizations. Here are organizations on campuses. Here are some online resources that could be really helpful as you figure out and come back and as we collaborate and work together on your college process. And finally, understanding your local state laws. And also understanding local state laws will shift with the wind, sometimes it feels like, but each administration offers us an opportunity to really think about what is the reality for my students in terms of the legally, what am I able to do and not do? How can I support and or not support? It is really important for you to understand that, and you don't have to be a lawyer. My special assistant, ChatGPT, can help to do a quick initial search of what are the relevant state laws today for students in this community, and you receive an initial search download which you can then look into even further. Okay, this is how it applies. This is how it doesn't apply. Here is how it applies. Here is how it doesn't apply. Great to have that larger umbrella understanding, but then think about the implications for your students day to day. Here are the state laws, no problem. Here are my local laws, no problem. Then you think about, are my students are students feeling uncomfortable going to the bathroom? This is something that is repeatedly reported, where students will avoid going to the restroom. Are students skipping school activities, as was mentioned? Do you see a student who is not participating in much? Yes, it's the state law, but what are the implications of that with the students you're serving? Are students eating lunch at all? What are the most vulnerable students doing within your space that you as a counselor can help with? Do you have granola bars in your office? Do you offer opportunities for them to come and sit with you for lunch and not have to necessarily navigate the lunchroom? Can you and other administrators or teachers within your school help students identify, here is a bathroom that is not as public, that doesn't feel as, feels a little bit safer potentially for you to use? These little pieces. So yes, you understand what's happening with your local and state laws, but think about, how does that affect my student on a daily basis, and how can I still help them navigate that? Okay, next slide, please. Actually, can I pause really briefly? Do folks have questions that I can address before I go on? I know I just kind of dumped a lot at you.
Yes, there is one question in the Q&A. It says, do you have any guidance or insight on how executive actions are impacting the student population, particularly in relations to impacts on DEI and funding grants and loans? Are there any trends in colleges and universities' reactions and responses to political changes?
Yes. Excellent question. Thank you so much for asking it. I'm going to open it so I can make sure I am addressing it. So for many students, what I'm hearing is, well, as you would imagine, there is a true feeling of fear of what will happen to me. And this is where you as an adult in the space can be really helpful to help them know that they have advocates. They are people who will help you navigate whatever the changes are. One, so help them understand that we're not going to just let you run into the world on your own and figure it out. So a lot of students are saying, oh my gosh, what's happening to me? On the colleges and universities are still articulating, and I see new language every single day of what does that mean. Some colleges are doubling down on, this is a space where we will make sure we're taking care of our students, and here is how. So that, if you're on the mailing list, you'll be able to see of various colleges and university, this is what this means. In terms of funding, that is getting a little trickier, but I have a feeling because there has been so much thrown at us so quickly, we need some time to see what is actually been enacted into law versus what rhetorics have been kind of thrown out. So yes, there are a lot of actions, there's a lot of movement. There's also a lot of advocates who are stepping forward to ensure and reassure students, here are the ways we're continuing to support you. But yes, there's what the final word isn't said yet. It is, I feel like it's only January, but it's not, as February, because many of the new executive orders that have been kind of shared are already halted or paused because of core challenges. So it is a to be continued, but what can we do while all this is kind of working around in the murk is to assure students that you are there to help them navigate. And a great response is, I don't know quite yet, but I am on it. and paying attention and listening. And as you have questions, come to me and let's keep talking through this. But really assuring students that there is someone, you, hopefully, who is there to help them, who sees them, who understands that this feels very, this doesn't feel as safe as you would want them to feel this current time, but you are there to help them and sit with them and help them navigate whatever comes next, and that you've got resources, which I'll provide at the end. You've got some resources to help them navigate this. Does it answer that question for the questioner? Okay.
Attendee, I
Okay.
think there's another question in the Q&A.
Okay.
Do you have any suggestions for any larger scale actions that we can do to help advocate at the local, state, and federal level?
Yes, a few things I would recommend you do almost immediately is tap into NACAC. NACAC is monitoring and creating, as they always do, as advocating that is as a counselor, not as a person, as a counselor in this setting, working through NACAC to see how are they addressing the legislation, how are they addressing and really paying attention to the legal responses that are coming out versus, again, there's a lot of rhetoric that feels, it feels as if it is immediate action, but it's just more rhetoric than action. So check-in with NACAC, I think, is that's what I have been doing, quite frankly, and also checking in with students. Looking to see, there are a lot of local organizations within your area. Just look like who is around you, who can use some help, and I'm assuming SACAC will have a lot of resources too. But there are other counselors within your group to help you. Potentially, you can collaborate and create a much larger noise within your local space. For me, I'm in Los Angeles, and a lot of the work that I will sometimes do is tap into my UCLA group to see what's happening there. I will tap into WACAC, which is our local regional organization, what's happening there, and weigh in those spaces, but also continuing to support my students on the ground, letting them know loud and verbally that I am fully in support of who you are. Continue to tap into me, ask all the questions you don't think you need to ask, or the questions that I should know. Whatever it is, let's collaborate together. Just tell me all of your concerns and I will see how I can help you navigate it. It is not going to be as easy and as beautifully cookie cutter as we want it to be, but it's necessary. Thank you so much for asking that question. I know I only have half an hour, so I will race through. Quick. Okay, thanks. Quick. I just wanted to offer, maybe I'll do one case study, actually, just case study number 3. But if you think about some of the examples that I've shared thus far of ways that students are being affected right now on the ground. Here are 3 options that I threw out, but if you think about a senior right now who has already been admitted to college, that's case study number 3, has already been admitted to their place where they felt really excited about. They were everything was going beautifully well until suddenly they're feeling as if the place that I thought isn't. How can we connect students with either former students from your schools or with the colleges and universities? So case study number 3, I recommend immediately connecting yourself first with the support offices, or reconnecting if you've already connected with them. The support offices, and I'm saying support offices because they come with a lot of different names, but find the person on the campus. Sometimes it is student success, sometimes it is a GSA, you name it, the names differ. But find the person on the college campus first as the counselor to say, hey, what's it like on your campus right now? How can we be helpful? I've got a student who is coming your way and would love to talk to someone. Do you have anyone? But you making that introduction first, hearing what's happening, because you can then see okay, does my student really have a concern, like a cause for concern, or are they going to be great? Is it just as wonderful as we thought it was going to be? But I would recommend that you first, as the counselor, make that call, make that email introduction, and set up some time to connect with the support staff on campus to see what's actually happening there before you then make that soft handoff between your student and the support person on the college campus, between your student and potentially the alumni who will help them to think about what was the reality on campus. What does life look like for you? I know we talked about it before, but now I'm feeling a little nervous. So, but you doing the work beforehand, which will probably take you half an hour to an hour at most, over time, not in one fell swoop, to help make that student have a softer handoff and hopefully begin a dialogue of, okay, here are the ways that I can transition to this school campus community. Here is how I can do that successfully. Yes, it's still a great place for me, or actually it's going to be trickier than I expected. So let's begin to make a plan. So I'm going to just, does that make sense to everybody? Thumbs up, hearts, yay, nay? Okay, thank you. So next slide, please. So as we think about, I think everybody on this call understands the importance of supporting the students, but I wanted to share additional resources with you, places that you can go to now to get, and you can also point your students to for support and really great resources. As I mentioned, I always go back to if you're in conversation with your administration, with parents, with anybody who may have questions about why are you doing these things in this way, your School Counselor Association ethical standard for counselors is your foundational document. It has everything you need to know. Why do you do what you do and how do you do what you do? That's your place. The second resources is GLSEN, as I mentioned, and there is this national survey. It is a 30-page survey results, but if you use the online version, it is really responsive and shows you, as I mentioned, state-specific data. And that's really helpful for you to know, okay, it's great to know what's happening nationally, but what's happening here that I can, again, use as a case for why I may need some supports. Maybe some of the funds you're going to use for a college tour could be a great way to say, hey, I need to visit these specific schools and here is why. The third Campus Pride Index, that's another one that you should have bookmarked. A really great long-standing resource of colleges and how they rank in terms of their welcoming or not welcoming attitude towards students on campus. And they not just give you like, here is a ranking or here is a grade, but why, and various resources, so not just, again, what happens on campus, but when the student needs to leave campus, what is the outside, what is that local community context? Is it as supportive as this wonderful campus community? Really, really highly recommend you have that on, saved as a often used document. The Human Rights Campaign is another. They offer additional great resources, including some specific language. Sometimes they update their resources pretty quickly in terms of how do I respond to, how do I navigate with, to the earlier question of how am I advocating for resources for students locally and nationally. There's some template letters and so forth that is usually there. I often go back to the NACAC guiding principles. Again, why do we do what we do? Why are we here in the first place? The Trevor Project is a great resource for you, but this is primarily for students. And if you go to the page, you'll see one of the ways that the Trevor Project is protecting students is they provide a quick escape button. They provide opportunities for students to have a great deal of confidentiality. They provide scholarship resources, counseling resources, just a whole host of resources for students. This is really students and focused on the LGBTQ community. So Highly, highly recommend this as a resource to share with students immediately. And finally, this is an older article that came out on NPR a couple years ago, but I think it's still relevant and helpful to know from a student's voice. This is how I feel about going to college now at this time. So I wanted to share that with you too. So that's all I have for today. Again, it is not at all exhaustive, but just to give you a quick taste of how you can begin to navigate this. And just know that you are an incredible resource, incredible and needed resource for students as they're feeling pretty fearful in this time, and they're not quite sure who to ask, when to ask. And it's really important that you are there as that resource. So I will pause. The next slide is just about questions and my information if you'd like to get in touch with me. But I will pause here for questions if anyone has any additional. Do I have time for questions? First of all.
Yes, you have a
Yeah.
couple of minutes for questions. So we'll see if any come in. Let's see. I didn't see any more in the Q&A.
Okay. So can I ask about responses from the crowd? Does that make sense? Does that resonate with you? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mhm.
Wonderful, wonderful.
All
All
right.
right.
Well, unless we have other questions, Utone, thank you so much for being with us today, for taking the time to put this presentation together, and for just being an advocate for students, which is, what we all aspire to be, is to be better advocates for our students. And so thank you so much for joining us and leading this important conversation.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for having me. And if folks need to get in touch with me, you have my info, and I'm always happy to answer any questions. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. All right, so we are near the end. I just want to thank you all again for joining us. I want to thank Danielle, my incredible co-chair, who very much did the lion's share of the work on putting this together and then let me coast along on her coattails. So I'd like to thank her a lot. And then I'm going to pass this off to Monique, who is going to close us out and have just a few words for us from the State and Area Initiatives Committee of SACAC. So thank you all so much for joining us and for learning with us. All right, Monique.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. I really don't have too much to say other than phenomenal job to our LA Drive-In Workshop team. This was a phenomenal session. I can't thank you two enough, Danielle and Marshall, for all of your work. And for those of you that may not know, the Drive-In Workshop co-chairs, they don't start in January. They are working on these sessions and securing presenters starting in the fall semester. So thank you for all your work that you have done, and it's truly appreciated. I also want to say thank you to your presenters. I have a ton of nuggets you probably can't see here, but I am full and I am grateful for all of the resources and also the encouragement. This was such an amazing session with such great takeaways. I am just sending such greetings from State and Area Initiatives on behalf of my co-chairs, Darren Morgan, who is in Arkansas, as well as Kristen Burr from Tennessee. Thanking everyone for joining us today. Again, if you missed some parts of it, you can catch the recording, or if you want to go back just to circle back and watch it again and catch some notes you might have missed, you can do that from our SACAC YouTube channel. With that, I say have a wonderful day, and thank you again, Marshall and Danielle, for your leadership, and to all of you for being here today.
Thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Danielle and Marshall, will you stay on real quick?
Okay.
Sure.
Hey, great job, y'all.
Thank you.
And stop the recording if you have not already.